This is what I consider the critical position for today's evaluation. And I think this one is kind of like a trick question, but my question is the same. How do we evaluate the position with white to play? And I'll explain why it's a trick question in a second. Obama Ate My Change says depends whose move. I'm not sure if it does depend on whose move it is. Alright, so Nerf Russians is kind of getting to the core of my trick question. I can't hide from him. So this position is concrete. So evaluating positions in a traditional way, or not a traditional way, but like the way I've explained or the way that other coaches do, I think it doesn't really make sense that much. Chilifo says black wins. However, this is a draw. And so here's my point. In positions that are of a concrete nature, you shouldn't depend on this kind of way of evaluating positions. I use this method to evaluate positions that I don't know. You should know the evaluation of the openings that you've prepared. You should know what the plans are. In fact, the evaluation doesn't even matter. If you know what move to play, the reason you're evaluating is to figure out what move to play, so you should play the move. And you should reach a position where you know what the plans are. And in super concrete endgames, it's better to know exactly what's going on. So here, this is just a theoretical draw. And Chuniflo says the king is cut off by 2 rows. But for this bishop pawn, I think that doesn't really help. You need, I think, 3 files for some cases. Plus, there are still concrete details. For example, here, I think there are 2 drawing moves. Maybe just 1. What about, so rook f4 they played in the game and eventually lost. But what about rook d4? Where's the 2-file cutoff now? See, the concrete details matter. You can't just use some rules or some positional evaluation for the concrete positions. So after rook f4, king e6, the position should still be a draw, but I managed to swindle because they just never managed to bring their king over. I stole a couple extra moves, and this was a little bit of time pressure. I actually forgot. I was trying not to use time pressure examples. But I was able to win the game. Alright, so we got a follow from Brevik did nothing wrong. Welcome, Brevik. Thanks for the follow. But yeah, still, I think evaluating the position could be useful. It's just that it's better to know concretely. So let's pretend you've never seen this in your life, and you want to use evaluation. The way that evaluation would help here is you would say to yourself, okay, black is better materially. They are arguably having a more active rook. Their king is not active yet. And based on this, you could figure out white's plan, that they want to increase the activity of this pawn by advancing it down the board until they can make a queen. And to do that, they need to improve their king. The only way to stop that is to put the king in front. Therefore, we have to play a move like rook d4. So this way of thinking, where you evaluate positions before beginning calculation, can actually help. For instance, let's pretend that you immediately start calculating rook a6. You know, it's just the first thing that comes to your mind and you're like in calculation mode because that's all you've been doing your entire life. Probably you're not going to succeed here after a move like, let's see, what should be the best here? It might be simple. It might just be like f5. But I think it might be better to play king f7. I haven't analyzed this, though, because rook a6 is just a random move. But my point is, if you're calculation-oriented and you don't do any evaluation, you don't figure out the overall pattern in the position, what's going on strategically, you're going to just start calculating wrong things. And if you become deeply committed in calculating one variation, you're going to play that variation. So it still does help to evaluate positions, even if you have good calculation or some other reasons. So they played rook f4 and lost, but rook d4 gets the king over. It neutralizes that activity advantage, and then it becomes, as they say, a matter of technique. All right, Shiniflo suggesting the plan that I was going for. You could play king f7, king g6 after rook a6. We would have to see if there's any resource to avoid this disaster, but I think that probably black is just better here. I was wondering actually if they could come back and try the same plan. However, let's see. Looks pretty bad.